Anyone who has lived in or around Atlanta remembers the old murder Kroger off Ponce de Leon Avenue. The store was a staple of Atlanta culture, and its lore lives on long after its demolition in 2016. What many people may not know is that in 2021, a horrific tragedy took place in another metro Atlanta city, making the term murder Kroger hit its residents far too close to home. These are the Henry County Hudson Bridge homicides. And just a trigger warning, the details of the story, they're disturbing. On July 8, 2021, Henry County resident Marie Elian received a call from her daughter Mirsha's roommate. The roommate explained that the night before, Mirsha told her she was going to meet up with a guy to hang out, but she never came home, and now wasn't answering her phone. That in itself didn't concern Marie too much. After all, Mirsha was 23 years old. Born on June 20th, 1998 in Boston, Massachusetts, Mirsha Victor moved to Georgia with her family in 2010. Just as she was starting middle school. She went on to graduate from Henry County High School and had been attending Georgia State University. She was studying to become an environmental engineer. Even though Mirsha was usually always in contact with either of her family or close friends, it's not too uncommon for a 23-year-old to go spend the night somewhere and just lose track of time, or even have their phone die and not have it for a while. However, Marie did become concerned when her roommate told her that Mirsha was supposed to work that day. To help pay for school, she was working part-time as a receptionist at a food processing plant called Kebabs in Clayton County. However, her manager said that she didn't show up for her shift. Mirsha was not the kind of person to just no-call, no-show at work, and Marie knew something must be wrong. She left her home in McDonough and headed to the Creekside apartment complex in DeKalb County where Mirsha lived. She was going to try to figure out if anyone she knew had spoken to her. Marie and Mirsha's roommate contacted everyone they could think of before finally deciding to get the police involved. When police arrived at the apartment, they were informed that she left to go meet a guy just before midnight, but she hadn't specified where she was meeting him or who that guy was. By this point, it was nearing midnight on July 8th, making Mirsha unaccounted for nearly 24 hours. And thankfully nowadays you don't have to wait for a full 24 to 48 hours to report someone missing, especially if the circumstances are suspicious. Since she hadn't shown up for work that day, the police issued a BOLO for Mirsha and her vehicle, a black 2008 Mustang convertible. With the community, family, and friends all looking for Mirsha, the police immediately began their investigation. They utilized the Find My iPhone feature to track Mirsha's phone, which was strangely located in a trash can at Kebabs. This was one of the first major indications that something nefarious was going on, because it's highly unlikely that Mirsha would just throw her own phone, her perfectly good phone, away in the trash. And according to her roommate, she had it when she left her apartment. The question now is, if Mirsha never made it to Kebabs for work, how did her phone end up there? The detective brought Mirsha's phone back to her apartment where her family and friends were waiting for any news. That is when her phone unexpectedly started ringing. In hopes of the caller being someone with information, or perhaps even Mirsha herself looking for her phone, the detective allowed her mom Marie to answer the call. Unfortunately, the caller was not Mirsha, but it was someone who would quickly propel the investigation forward. The caller introduced himself as a man named Dennis, and told Marie that he worked with Mirsha at Kebabs. However, from there, the call quickly took a strange turn as he started rambling about being in love with Mirsha and even having plans to propose. He then said that there were some things that he needed to talk to Marie about in person and asked her to meet him at his apartment. So let's just take a pause for a second. Obviously, this call was a random, confusing, and jarring red flag. Marie had never heard of this Dennis guy before, and now he was asking to meet with her in private. Everyone could tell that there was definitely something weird about this guy, and with the okay from detectives, Marie agreed to meet him. But for safety reasons, she didn't mention that they'd be coming along. Marie drove separately to the address Dennis gave, which was an apartment complex called Hudson Bridge Terrace in Stockbridge. Stockbridge is a city in Henry County about 20 miles from where Mirsha lived in DeKalb. When Marie got there, Dennis came out to speak to her in the parking lot, but he immediately noticed the two detectives watching from a distance. He quickly became agitated, saying things like, "What are they doing here?" and "I can't talk to you if the cops are here," causing the detectives to step in. I do want to mention that this entire investigation moved extremely quickly, and around this same time, detectives learned that Mirsha's phone had actually pinged at the Hudson Bridge Terrace apartments as well. It only took them a few months to realize that Dennis knew something, and since he too worked at Kebabs, they figured that he more than likely brought her phone there and threw it away. But why? The two detectives on the scene put Dennis in the back of their car and told him that he was being detained. Since Mirsha's phone pinged at his apartments, and due to the bizarre nature of their interaction, they were going to wait for a judge to sign a search warrant. However, they would soon find a disturbing key piece of evidence before stepping foot inside the building. While they were waiting for the warrant, one of the detectives began walking around the small apartment complex, looking to see if Mirsha's car was parked behind one of the other buildings, and to ask anyone if they had seen her black Mustang. That was when he noticed something that instantly made his stomach drop: a bloody mattress sticking right out of the complex dumpster. The whole place was immediately shut down as a potential crime scene, and unfortunately, that mattress was nothing compared to everything else that would soon be uncovered. Before we can get into all of that, let's just first talk a little bit about who this guy Dennis actually is. Sitting in the back of the detective's car was lifelong criminal Dennis Lamore Lane. At 42 years old, he had recently moved to Georgia from the Chicago, Illinois area after spending nearly 2 decades in prison for a 2002 conviction of raping a 10-year-old girl. After speaking with people in the Hudson Bridge Terrace complex, detectives learned that neighbors were not made aware of Dennis being on the sex offender registry. One even stated that he assumed Dennis had young children because he would stand outside and watch the kids get off the school bus every day. Detectives also showed neighbors photos of Mirsha's Mustang, and several said that they had seen her car there in the early hours of July 8th, but it was gone by the next day. This gave some glimmer of hope that Mirsha had possibly left the apartment on her own, but that hope was unfortunately short-lived after detectives were granted access into Dennis's apartment. In the apartment, there was noticeable blood on the bathroom floor, and the mattress was missing from the frame in the bedroom, making it glaringly obvious that the mattress and the dumpster came from his apartment. While crime scene technicians began processing the scene, apartment management gave investigators all of the recent surveillance footage, which threw an unexpected twist into the case. The footage showed Mirsha arriving at Dennis's apartment in her car within an hour after she left her home in DeKalb. What it didn't show was Mirsha ever leaving. The next day, it also showed someone moving the bloody mattress out of the apartment and to the complex dumpster, but that person wasn't Dennis. It was actually his 41-year-old brother, Cleounsee, who also has a disturbing criminal history. Cleounsee Fischer, who I will refer to as Cleo, moved with Dennis to the Chicago area and had been working in Henry County as a barber. Based on the timeline of his brother's move, it kind of seems like they came here to Georgia to start over. It also seems like something must run in the family, because like Dennis, Cleo was charged with his first-degree sexual assault of a child less than 13, resulting in great bodily harm as well as child enticement with sexual contact in 2015. In another bizarre detail that just adds to the twisted nature of this family, Cleo actually shot and killed his nephew, Travion Lane, Dennis Lane's son, in 2020. Supposedly, there was an argument between Cleo and Travion, who was wanted on a larceny charge in Illinois at the time. Cleo and Dennis were reported to have allowed Travion to keep guns hidden in a cable box behind their apartment. And after the argument, Cleo went to retrieve one of them. When he came back, Travion reportedly started lunging at him with a knife, causing Cleo to shoot. Now, the killing was ruled self-defense, but regardless, if somebody killed my son, even if it was in self-defense, I'm not going to be cool with you. I'm not going to be happy with you. I mean, I'm definitely not going to live with you. Family or not, that's just a hard line. That being said, based on what we've learned about Dennis so far, I highly doubt that he was winning any Father of the Year awards. And in case that wasn't enough, Cleo wasn't the only person seen taking potential evidence out of the apartment. Someone else was caught on surveillance loading what appeared to be black plastic bags into their car, but surprisingly, this possible suspect was actually another woman, 40-year-old Ronisha Preckwinkle. It's unclear how she knows Cleo and Dennis, but based on her social media, it appears that she graduated from college in Chicago, Illinois, where the brothers are from. I was also able to see that she graduated with a master's degree in nutrition, so maybe she worked at Kebabs as well, but I'm not entirely sure. Another interesting detail about Ronisha is that she is actually the daughter-in-law of the Cook County Board president, Tony Preckwinkle, although sources say they are estranged. This could indicate that Ronisha is no longer with Tony's son and was dating either Cleo or Dennis. Investigators were able to search Ronisha's car, and although no evidence was found inside, another horrifying piece of evidence was discovered inside the apartment, making it clear that all three were involved in what took place to Mirsha. When detectives found Dennis Lane's phone in his apartment, they were met with a shocking video made only 2 hours after Mirsha left her apartment. The footage showed Dennis filming himself tying Mirsha Victor up with electrical cord and sexually defiling her. And tragically, it was also made clear by the video that she had been shot and killed. Not only was Dennis a rapist and a murderer, he was also committing necrophilia and recording it with his brother Cleo and Ronisha present in the apartment. All three were arrested on July 9, 2021 and charged with second-degree murder, false imprisonment, tampering with evidence, with the added charge of necrophilia for Dennis. However, at that point, a body had still not been found. In the following week, it was determined that Ronisha moved Mirsha's car after it was located abandoned in Bibb County, and Stockbridge residents looked on as searchers scoured the area for any more clues. On July 19th, possibly in an attempt to make a deal, one of the suspects directed investigators just down the road from the apartments. Police cars, detectives, crime scene tape, and a tent were set up in a small wooded area next to the Kroger, also on Hudson Bridge Road. Tragically, not long after, the body of Mirsha Victor was found dead at only 24 years old.
Developing tonight, heartbreak for a family as it's confirmed that human remains found in Henry County were positively identified as a woman who'd been reported missing weeks ago. CBS 46's Tori Cooper just got an update from the police department there, and she's live in Stockbridge for us. Tori?
Tracy, just a few hours ago, I spoke with the Henry County Coroner's Office, and they confirmed that the set of human remains discovered behind the Kroger belongs to that of missing woman 23-year-old Mirsha Victor. Now, that led us right here to police headquarters, where I sat down with Captain Randy, and he did not provide that information for us tonight, but he did provide more details about the suspect charges as well as their efforts to close this case.
Well, we're surprised to find any sets of human remains anywhere in the area. It's very uncommon.
And as if there wasn't enough depravity in this case, even more shockwaves were sent through the community when detectives announced that Mirsha was not the only body discovered in the woods. Next to her laid a second, far more decomposed, unidentified female. A few days later, the second victim was identified through dental records as missing Locust Grove resident, 19-year-old Conteshia McCoy.
News, Henry County Police charging Dennis Lane with murder in the death of 19-year-old Conteshia McCoy. Police finding her remains next to the remains of 23-year-old Mirsha Victor earlier this month behind a grocery store. Lane is also facing murder charges in Victor's death.
A few months prior to February 21st, Conteshia was reported missing by her mother, Coco McCoy, after she had not spoken to her daughter for a couple of days. She informed the police that Conteshia had bipolar disorder and was concerned that she had not been taking her medication. A few days before her disappearance, Conteshia had complained to some co-workers about an ex-boyfriend bothering her. She was last seen on surveillance being picked up by an unknown person from her job at Walmart. Coco also told the Henry County Police that she had a bad feeling about this ex and that he had been stalking Conteshia for weeks. She gave the police his name, but when they called to ask if he had heard from Conteshia, he said no. Coco reported that the ex proceeded to call her repeatedly, saying that he wanted to marry Conteshia. Sound familiar? He came to her home asking where Conteshia was, and another time he called saying he was sorry. Coco demanded answers, asking what he had to be sorry for, before she finally yelled, "What did you do to my child?" And his only response was, "I can't." This man was none other than Dennis Lane. Coco McCoy had stated that she tried to tell the police about Dennis multiple times, but they never looked into him other than making that one phone call. She believes that had the police taken her complaint seriously, they would have discovered what happened to Conteshia before he had the chance to murder Mirsha months later.
Just hours ago, she told our John Sherrick that she told police who might have taken her daughter, the same man now suspected of killing the first woman.
She is drained, numb.
I know at this point I'm tired of crying. I am. Last night I cried myself to sleep.
Coco McCoy, in her Locust Grove home along with her husband Antonio, just found out what they had feared all along. Police confirmed that the remains found in these woods in Henry County were those of her missing 19-year-old daughter, Conteshia McCoy. Conteshia's remains found next to the remains of 23-year-old Mirsha Victor. Victor was murdered earlier this month, police say, by a 41-year-old man named Dennis Lane, a convicted sex offender who lives nearby these woods. Coco McCoy says Lane is the same man who had been stalking her daughter Conteshia, claiming he wanted to marry her just before she disappeared this past February. But in the past 5 months leading up to Mirsha Victor's death, Locust Grove police, she says, never pursued the leads she gave them that Lane might be responsible for her daughter's disappearance.
And I hate it for the Victor family. They had to endure that. You know, all this could have been avoided if you would have just went to his house like we kept telling you to do. If you just would have went, you couldn't save my daughter, but you could have saved somebody else's child.
Presiding over this case is the Honorable Henry County Superior Court Chief Judge Brian Amaro. Judge Amaro has been involved in other high-profile murder cases, like the killer foster mom Jennifer Rosenbaum, which is definitely an interesting case we can cover in the future. Dennis, Cleo, and Ronisha were all initially denied bond, and it seems that after Dennis and his attorney went over the discovery file, he realized that he had been an even bigger idiot to try to take the case to trial. In February of 2022, Dennis pleaded guilty to 2 counts, each of malice murder, felony murder, and concealing the death of another. 1 count of aggravated assault, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, necrophilia, and tampering with evidence. At his own sentencing, Judge Amaro handed down 2 consecutive life terms and said, "Mr. Lane, you forfeited your right to live in a civilized society." As of June 2024, Cleounsee Fischer and Ronisha Preckwinkle have yet to enter any pleas, and a trial date has not been set. It also appears that Ronisha may be out on bond, but we'll have to keep following this case to see where it goes from here. So that's really where we're at with this tragic case. If I had to guess, I think Dennis probably became obsessed with the women after being turned down. He stalked Conteshia and eventually killed her after she no longer wanted to be with him. He probably wanted to be with Mirsha as well, but maybe after she turned him down and wanted to remain friends, he decided to have her anyway and to take her life. I can see this being a motive for Dennis, along with his sexual perversion and possibly a blow to his ego. But what I can't understand is why Cleo and Ronisha would wrap themselves up in this situation with him. Ronisha is a highly educated woman, so surely she would have known that helping cover up this incredibly sloppy crime would not turn out well. Some articles have stated that Cleo claims that he was threatened by his brother to help clean up the crime, which I don't buy at all. First of all, we know that Cleo has no problem shooting people to defend himself. And second of all, if you're in a small apartment and see or hear someone get shot and then sexually assaulted, at any point you could walk out the door and call 911. And the same for Ronisha. She could have also called while she was alone, ditching Mirsha's car, but she didn't. One disturbing detail about this case is that 2 child rapists on the sex offender registry were able to live in an apartment complex with families, children, and seemingly didn't have to notify their neighbors about their status. I also learned that Dennis only had to report in with his parole officer twice a year. That just seems extremely lenient. Even though they technically served their time, in my opinion, someone who's committed such a heinous crime, especially against a child, should at the very least have to be monitored more than just twice a year. Did they go through risk assessments or any form of mental health treatment? It's just chilling to think about kids playing in the neighborhood, going door to door for trick-or-treating, and no one knowing that their neighbors Dennis and Cleo were sexual predators of prepubescent children, and now young adult women as well. The fact that Dennis Lane took the lives of these women and then had the audacity to contact both of their mothers is almost inconceivable. If the necrophilia didn't make it clear enough that he got pleasure out of this, then I think pretending to be concerned and looking their moms in the face after what he did certainly does. Since it's been said that Dennis is the one who threw Mirsha's phone away at Kebabs, it would be interesting to know his reasoning for calling the next day. I mean, maybe he planned on leaving a voicemail, pretending to wonder where she was to develop some kind of alibi. Who knows? He probably wasn't expecting her mom to answer, and I can't help but wonder, what would have happened to Marie if she had gone to his house alone? The murders of Mirsha Victor and Conteshia McCoy have been a devastating loss to their loved ones and their communities. Mirsha's family stated that there was no way she would have been hanging out with Dennis had she known he was a rapist. She probably felt sorry for him at work or thought that he needed a friend. I took some time to watch the live stream of her memorial service. Mirsha was described as being a light in people's lives and someone who always tried to see the good in people. Unfortunately, there was no good to be found in Dennis Lane.
She was always the light of the room. She wouldn't go a day without complimenting somebody. She was ready for life. She was just non-judgmental, always looking to pick somebody up from whatever shambles they're in. I'm still speechless.
If there's a takeaway from these senseless crimes, I hope that it may inspire some people to look into the sex offender registry in their area. These days, there are easily accessible apps that can help the public at least be informed about what potential dangers are lurking about their neighborhoods. The other thing I would encourage is to always let at least one person know where you're going, even if that's just having your closest friend or family member following you on Find My Friends or sharing your location, because you truly never know what can happen. On Conteshia's grandmother's Facebook, she wrote, "I can still smell her perfume and the strong smell of nail polish remover. She always asked if I had any. I can still feel her touch sometimes. Grandma loves and misses you, but I have to be strong for the rest of the family. She will get justice." Even though there has been some justice served in this case, Mirsha and Conteshia both deserve to have all of the people involved in these crimes behind bars. And I'm definitely going to keep a lookout on any updates in this case. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines. Stay safe out there.